Welcome back. In this week's Ask a Pro segment, Mark at Brilliance Computer Technologies does my job better than I can and tells us about computer screens and monitors. Let's check it out.
Nowadays, there's pretty much just LED monitors. And in terms of panels, most of them are just standard LED panels. Some of the nicer ones are IPS. It stands for inline plane switching. Effectively what it means is that you get a more consistent color across whatever angle you're looking at it. So the brightness doesn't change, the color doesn't change. Most people aren't going to care, but if you're doing any kind of photo work, any kind of graphical stuff at all, it will make it more reliable and consistent. They are in fact the same thing. The only difference between LCD and LED is the backlight. So the actual physical panel is the same. On a standard LCD monitor, they actually run a fluorescent tube to provide the light. On an LED monitor, they run LED diodes, which provides the light. The difference is they're they're extremely white, so you get a much more accurate color, you get a higher contrast with LED, and technically, a lower power consumption. HD is really anything that's over 720p. Most of the time, the standard now is becoming HD being 1080p. So most screens that are about 22 inches and above generally tend to be 1080p. If you're using as a monitor, it means it's got 1920 pixels across horizontally by 1080 vertically, which means that anything that you're looking at is crisper and sharper. You don't see that in monitors anymore. I is just interlaced. 1080i is effectively 720p. The biggest problem with the higher resolution screens, even 1080p screens, is it can be annoying for people to see what's on the screen. If you're a little bit older and you buy a 20-inch screen and it's running 1920 by 1080, it makes the text very, very small. It makes it very annoying to read, so you always have to zoom things in or play with the scaling on it. 24-inch screens, 27-inch screens look fantastic at 1080p. If you're running 4K, the resolution is 4 times that of what 1080p is. So most people aren't going to require that at all. If you're trying to view web pages, all it's going to do is just make things more annoying. It means that you're going to have to buy higher end gear to support the screen, which you're already finding annoying. If you're going to game on it, it can make a difference in gaming, but again, currently, the video cards and stuff that are required to run a 4K game are very, very expensive. So it's something you have to be pretty dedicated to want to get into. Where they are really good is if you have a 27-inch screen or a 30-inch screen and you're running that higher resolution and you're doing things like photo editing, or you're doing things like CAD. It makes a big difference because you can see more of what you're actually working on. You know what? I've never sold a 3D monitor. The problem with 3D in general is you'd probably want to stay. Do they even sell a 60 hertz 3D monitor? I was going to say that would kind of defeat the purpose of it. 120 hertz is effectively just two 60 hertz resolutions being shown simultaneously. Nowadays, almost anything can run multiple screens. Even if your computer currently doesn't support multiple screens, you can buy a video card for $50. That'll do that for you. It is definitely worth having 2 screens if you have the desk space and you think you can use it in terms of productivity. It just allows that much more space for you to do your work. If you're doing photo editing, you have a full screen that you can run your editing on, move all the paintbrushes and palettes and stuff over to the secondary screen. If you're doing anything, if you're doing video editing, by default it immediately stretches over all your screens. If you're doing CAD work, again, it's the same thing. You've got one screen for all your work, and all your palettes and stuff are all on the other screen. I could not possibly not have 2 screens at home. Absolutely you can. The downside with that is if they're too far off in resolution, things like your mouse cursor change size when you go from screen to screen. Also, your screens, you can play with them in Windows to try to level them off. Otherwise, your mouse will jump one way or the other when you cross the screen barrier, which is pretty annoying if it's not set up right, but it doesn't take long to kind of tweak it into the proper way. The best possible situation is not even necessarily the same size, but very close in resolution between the 2 screens. I mean, response time isn't as important nowadays because most screens are at 5 millisecond or better, which is all you'd need for virtually everything. In terms of the refresh rate, in terms of the resolution, most of the time, if you're using the machine seriously, you're going to want a 22 to 24 inch screen. I mean, even a 27 would be even better, but 22 to 24 is kind of the sweet spot for most people. They're all going to be, virtually all of them are going to be 1080p nowadays. So you almost don't have a choice on that. If you're older, or if you're a little more concerned about your eyes, it's worth getting a bigger screen because they're running the same resolution, so a 24-inch screen just makes everything a little bigger than the 22. There is not a difference. The screens themselves, if a screen supports 1920 by 1080 and it has a VGA cable, the VGA cable supports 1920 by 1080. If it's got HDMI, it still supports the same. If it's got DVI, it still supports the same. So it really doesn't matter which one you use. As far as I can tell, the only thing that's a bad idea is to plug multiple ones in. Because what a lot of people do is they see all these ports on the back and then they plug all their cables in, and Windows thinks you're running 2 screens, but in fact you're only running 1. So they'll turn on the computer and it's blank. I had that conversation this weekend. There's converters for DVI to HDMI, there's converters from VGA to DVI, but there's no convenient converter from VGA to HDMI. That's kind of the break. You can't do that. If you're going from VGA to DVI, the reason that it works is DVI also sends the analog signal from VGA along. And you can go from DVI to HDMI because HDMI is pure digital and DVI does both. But you can't go from VGA to HDMI because there's no analog on the HDMI channel. It makes no difference at all, none at all. As long as it can pass the signal, it's all the same. So if you have a $6 cable and you plug it in and it works, buying a $600 cable is not going to make it look better. It's all digital, it's all ones and zeros. As long as they're getting there, it's all the same. Average users, LG and Samsung both make excellent screens. They tend to have a 3-year warranty on them, which is also kind of nice. So if you're actually buying a good screen that you want to use, you're not gonna be crushed if it breaks in a year. Average price range for 22-inch screens are usually $150 to $200. 24-inch screens tend to be closer to $200 to $250. But that's a ballpark. They fluctuate pretty wildly. Size, big. As far as I'm concerned, it's the thing that you're staring at all the time, so get it as big as you can so that you can see more and you can enjoy it more. If you have any questions, we're here at the store pretty much all the time, 3700 Kempt Road, or you can look us up online at www.brillcom.com.
That wraps up this week's episode of TechUp. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think and suggest some apps for our recap segment. I'm Sarah Ingram, and I'll see you next time.
Come see me in the moonlight. Something wrong with my eyesight. This darkness seems
Technology and science news, courtesy of our friends at Satura.
Tell me what is so wrong. Tell me what you've been waiting on. I've been catching you singing along with every word I sing. Or are you waiting on a hero?